All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack one of the most chilling, perfectly executed locked room mysteries of the 1930s. Today, we're laser-focused on a case that starts out as a brutal puzzle, but trust me, it twists into an absolute psychological thriller. We're looking at the true identity behind room 1046.
Before we even get to the crime scene, we really have to ask a central question. How on earth does a dead man keep writing letters to his mom? Because, as we're about to see, finally identifying the victim in this case didn't solve the mystery, it actually made it terrifyingly worse. The pursuit of the true identity behind room 1046 proves that sometimes a stolen life is far more disturbing than a stolen wallet.
So let's get into Section 1, the locked room mystery, the impossible crime.
Picture this. After a hotel phone is left off the hook multiple times, a bellboy finally uses a passkey to get into the room. Inside, a man is found severely tortured. We're talking stabbed in the chest, fractured skull, and a clothesline tied around his neck, wrists, and ankles. But here is the total paradox the police faced. The door was locked from the outside. If the victim locked it himself, the bellboy's passkey wouldn't have even turned in the lock. Plus, a doctor determines the blood is completely dry. These horrific wounds are already 6 to 7 hours old. And yet, the room is completely stripped of the victim's clothes, and the murder weapon is literally nowhere to be found.
Now, miraculously, when the cops actually arrive, the victim is still semi-conscious. A detective leans in and asks him, "Who did this? Who was in the room with you?" And the guy just replies, "Nobody." He claims he fell against the bathtub. Shortly after offering this completely cryptic final word, he slips into a coma and dies, taking his secrets and his killer's identity straight to the grave.
Which brings us to Section 2, a man with no name, the ghost of room 1046.
What's totally wild about this next phase of the investigation is how the victim had intentionally and meticulously just erased himself from the world before he died. The authorities were essentially dealing with a ghost. He used aliases all over town. He checked into the President Hotel as Roland T. Owen from LA, but police soon figured out he'd stayed at the nearby Mulbach Hotel as Eugene K. Scott. He even introduced himself to a wrestling promoter as Cecil Werner. None of these men actually existed, and yet the killer, or maybe the victim himself, left absolutely zero identifying items behind. No wallet, no ID, no clothes, just a bizarre collection of actual trash. A hairpin, a safety pin, a necktie label, an unlit cigarette, and a tiny bottle of diluted sulfuric acid.
So, after months on display at a funeral home with literally nobody claiming the body, Roland T. Owen was about to be buried in an anonymous pauper's grave. But right at the last minute, a mysterious caller contacts the undertaker. He promises to send funds for a proper burial in Memorial Park Cemetery, and he delivers this super ominous justification for the murder. He says Owen had jilted a girl, and that cheaters usually get what's coming to them.
And he actually backs it up. To prove he wasn't bluffing on that anonymous threatening call, this exact amount of cash, $25, was mailed anonymously to the funeral home just 20 days later to cover those burial expenses.
But wait, it gets even stranger. Exactly 13 American Beauty roses are delivered to the grave. An anonymous caller had instructed the florist to include a card with a very specific, chillingly affectionate note, just signed, "Love Forever, Louise." Yet at the funeral itself, which was heavily staked out by detectives disguised as gravediggers, not a single person showed up.
Let's look at Section 3, discovering Artemis Ogletree, the true identity.
Fast forward 10 months later, and the case completely fractures wide open. A mother in Birmingham, Alabama named Ruby Ogletree happens to see a photo of the dead man in a magazine, and boom, everything changes. The rugged, mysterious Roland T. Owen was actually just a boy. Ruby immediately recognized her son from an unmistakable childhood grease burn scar on his head. His real name was Artemis Ogletree, and he was only 17 years old when he was murdered. She gave the police their very first real break in discovering the true identity behind 1046. But for Ruby, this identification absolutely shattered her reality.
And here's why in Section 4, the posthumous letters, an impossible timeline.
This is the crux of the terror, you guys. If her 17-year-old son Artemis died in a Kansas City hotel room in January, who on earth had she been communicating with for the last 10 months? The timeline here is guaranteed to give you goosebumps. Artemis is brutally murdered in January, yet all through the spring of 1935, Ruby is getting these chatty, typed letters from Artemis claiming he's living it up in New York.
Then, in August, months after the kid was buried, a man calling himself Godfrey Jordan calls Ruby claiming to have just left Artemis in Cairo, Egypt. It proves without a shadow of a doubt that someone was actively, elaborately impersonating her dead son.
And the deception is chilling when you put them side by side. The real Artemis used simple language, he traveled with a specific friend named Joe Simpson, and he always wrote his letters to his mom by hand. The imposter, though? He spun these wild, extravagant tales of traveling to Europe on freighters. He used strange slang, and crucially, he exclusively used a typewriter. To cover that little detail up, the imposter actually wrote a letter claiming Artemis had learned to type because large typewriter companies let you practice on their machines for free.
Once Ruby stopped getting the letters, the imposter went to truly insane lengths to cover his tracks. That guy, calling himself Godfrey Jordan, he kept Ruby on the phone for 45 minutes, just feeding her this wild story. He claimed Artemis saved him from thugs in Cairo, Egypt. And even crazier, Jordan claimed Artemis had his right thumb blown off in the fight. Why? To allegedly explain to his own mother why he could no longer hold a pen and was forced to type his letters. The psychological manipulation here is just absolutely astounding.
Moving to Section 5, the suspicious friend, Joe Simpson's alibi.
The police eventually zeroed in on some career criminal, but a mother's intuition told Ruby they had the totally wrong man. Rejecting the official prime suspect, Ruby basically launched her own amateur investigation into her son's original travel companion, Joe Simpson. And wow, she systematically dismantled Joe's alibi, exposing massive inconsistencies. Joe claimed he and Artemis parted ways in LA, but Artemis had actually wired home for shoe money from Kansas City. When confronted about Artemis being found without shoes at the crime scene, Joe laughed and said those were his shoes, accidentally placing himself right there with Artemis during the exact time frame he needed footwear. Joe then claimed he couldn't be the killer because he was in high school in 1935. While Ruby checked the records, Joe was expelled for poor attendance on January 2nd, literally the exact day Artemis checked into the President Hotel. Finally, Joe claimed he'd received a poorly typed letter from Artemis, but Ruby knew the truth. The typewriter was the signature of the imposter.
But the nail in the coffin came during this tense confrontation in a cramped car. Ruby noticed Joe shared the exact same vocal tick, starting his sentences with, "You see," as that mysterious caller, Godfrey Jordan. While Joe was making up excuses, saying, "You see, Artemis told me he wanted to go to Africa," Joe's friend, who was sitting right there in the car, accidentally corrected him with the exact location: Egypt. Egypt was the specific fabricated location used in the imposter's anonymous phone call. I mean, how would Joe's friend know about Egypt unless Joe was deeply involved in the whole lie?
Now for Section 6 of 50-Year Cold Case, the final clue.
Despite Ruby handing the police this meticulously documented, totally airtight case against Joe Simpson, the authorities just ignored her. He was never prosecuted, and the trail goes totally dark for decades. Fast forward over 50 years. A researcher named Dr. John Hare receives an anonymous phone call from out of state. The caller claims to be clearing out an elderly person's estate, maybe even the killer's estate, and finds a box. Inside, newspaper clippings of the murder and, chillingly, a mysterious physical item taken directly from room 1046. But when pressed to actually identify the item, the caller just hung up and disappeared forever, offering this tantalizing promise of physical evidence, only to snatch it away. Ultimately, the true identity behind room 1046 is a story of two people. We know the 17-year-old boy who died in the dark, but we are left forever wondering about the phantom who lived. Did Artemis simply fall in with the wrong crowd? Or did the person he trusted most not only murder him, but systematically steal his life, his identity, and his mother's hope long after his blood had dried? So, what do you think? Who was really sitting behind that typewriter?